of Ruth. We're in the book, second chapter. Today we're going to pick up in verse 8. We're going to read to the end of the verse of the chapter. You know, wow, it's a lot of verses. That's okay. I plan to talk as fast as I did this morning. Usually it's a good laugh. No joke. One time I was in Baghdad. I was preaching along, and you could see everybody in the congregation kind of doing this. Talking way too fast here. Yes. Okay. When I do that, just flag me down, send up a flare, and I'll start slowing it down. Ruth, second chapter, starting in verse 8. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen carefully, my daughter. Do not go and glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go on from this one, but stay here with my maids. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Indeed, I have commanded the servants not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars and drink from what the servants draw." And she fell on her face and bowed to the ground and said, "Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" And Boaz answered to her and said, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother in the land of your birth and came to the people that you did not previously know. May the Lord reward your work, and your wages be full from the Lord God of Israel, under whose wing whom you have come to seek refuge." And then she says, "I have found favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me, and indeed have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants." And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come, that you may eat of the bread, and dip a piece of bread into the vinegar." So she sat beside the reapers, and he served her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and had some left. So when she arose to glean, Boaz commanded his servant, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not insult her. And also you shall purposely pull out for her some grain from the bundles, and leave it, that she may glean, and do not rebuke her." So she gleaned in the field until evening, and then she beat out the grain, what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw that what she had gleaned. She also took it out and gave to Naomi and what she had left, and she was satisfied. And her mother-in-law then said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work? And may he who took notice of you be blessed." And she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, "The name of the man whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter, May he be blessed of the Lord, whom has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead. And again Naomi said to her, "The man is our relative, but he is one of our closest relatives." Then Ruth the Moabitess said, "Furthermore, he said to me that you should stay close to the maidservants until they had finished all my harvest." And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter-in-law, that you go out with his maids, lest others fall upon you in another field. So stay close by the maidens of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest." And she lived with her mother-in-law. All right. Pick up the story. Remember, chapter 1, doom and gloom, right? Starts off all kind of happy. You had God as my king. Sweet, pleasant. Children's name, sick and sicker. I still don't get that. I mean, my name's Ashley, but I mean, come on. Marrying stiff-necked and friend, and then from there it just becomes like a Greek tragedy. And death after death after death after death. And Naomi's response towards the end is, "God's hand's against me. God has been mean to me. God has purposely caused me harm." And yet, even in chapter 1, we see God's provision for Naomi through the fact that Ruth simply will not leave. She says, "I will go and stay with you and be with you and your people." And she will not leave her. Then we have the cryptic reference that they return at the beginning of the barley harvest. And know that there's a barley harvest, and then immediately preceding the barley harvest is a wheat harvest. I'm hot. Is a wheat harvest. And so you see where God is providing not just for a means by which Naomi has someone to take care of her physically, but also someone who is there to take care of her with food. And last week we noticed that there was a lot of perchance, just by happenstance, that Naomi or Ruth just wandered into a field owned by, just by happenstance, her long-lost relative. Not hers, but Naomi's. And so by happenstance, just by chance, pure chance encounter, Boaz comes to the fields to see, by chance, this woman who is there. Right? By chance, it was happening. No, this is all by the hand of providence. You saw where Naomi, when Ruth enters into the field, she goes to the field and is directed to the field where she says, "With one whom I may find favor." She goes to the field of the one man who is capable of redeeming her and Naomi back and make provision for a future son and provision for earthly sustenance and future for the redemption of land, as we will see coming up here in the next few chapters. It's not an accident. Naomi's path and Ruth's path were not just some feather floating on the wind. Woo! And we have this big philosophical argument. Does some feather float on the wind because it's just following the currents and updraft? Or is it being guided by some unseen hand? If you ever watched Forrest Gump, that's the whole premise of the movie. You watch it because it starts with a feather, it ends with a feather. If you haven't caught that before, watch it again. It's amazing. Two passive people, one of which just floats along the breeze, and the other one who just seems like his path is guided by things. And so you have here this provision being made, and as of yet, Ruth has not met Boaz, but Boaz has she's called Boaz's eye. He asks his foreman, "Who is this woman?" Remember, what does the foreman say? "Why, that woman, that's the Moabite woman. You know, the one that came back from Naomi. You know, the chick from Moab." As though he didn't get it the first time. Throughout this text, you have a problem that the Jewish people are having with the fact that she's a Moabitess. The author of this text keep bringing it up. You'll see here in a minute that this pops up a few more times. But notice what happens here. Boaz says to Ruth, "Listen carefully, my daughter. Do not go and glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go from this one, but stay here with my maids. Let your eyes be on the field that they reap, and go after them. Indeed, I have commanded my servants not to touch you." One of the problems in the ancient at this time is, again, men were doing what was right in their own eyes, and therefore, instead of making provision for the widow, orphan, and elderly, which was required under Jewish law that they had to leave certain sections of their field for the sustenance of those, and they were allowed to go and grab and reap, what they would do is they would run them off. And what Boaz has said is, "Look, I have commanded my servants to leave you alone." We'll see that he does much more than that. You'll see here in a minute that he not only instructs his servants not to touch her, but to do something else. That is, just, if you were there, the immense kindness that Boaz shows to this woman is beyond the pale. It goes above and beyond what a good Jew should do. It's just an amazing, it is truly a provision by providence by which God is doing through the work of Boaz. Now watch this. "I commanded not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars of my servants." You get to go to the drinking jars of the people I pay to cut my fields and glean my fields. Totally unheard of. This would be something that would never have happened to any other gleaner. What Boaz is doing is he is demonstrating a great deal of kindness. And that's what Naomi says to Ruth, "Hey, go and may you find kindness in the house and home of your families." Little does she recognize that statement of blessing that she gives is actually being fulfilled here in this passage with Boaz. And notice what he does. He doesn't say, "Yeah, just stay in my field and glean. I know about you. I've heard about you. Just stay with my gleaners." Instead, he opens up a great deal more. When they go to take a drink, you go to that water jar and take a drink. It's totally unheard of in this culture. God actually bringing a provision to a woman that is an outsider. Now, this is not going to sit well. This is why he issues the edict repeatedly to his crew. Don't you dare put your hand on her. Don't you insult her. Don't you try to run her off. So you remember we looked at the text earlier on last week. The statement said that Boaz was a man of great wealth. The phrase actually is a valiant man, or a man of great, great man of valiant valor. Would be a rough way to translate. It was the phraseology used of David's valiant men, which some indicators say, well, since he's a little bit older, he's probably just a wealthy man. But in the context of the Judges, this is also used of men of renown in war. Boaz looks at these men and says, listen, touch her, and you and I are going to have a reckoning. Do not insult her. Do not try to run her off. And allow her to drink from your water pitchers. Amazing amount of provision that's being provided to this outsider. To the one that everybody refers to as the Moabitess. She's got a scarlet M right there she's wearing around town. Everybody knows who she is because she's the foreigner that came back with Naomi. You know, that foreign chick. She's an outsider. I don't think she washes her hands when she eats dinner. And yet here's Boaz saying, no. You will go and you will be treated almost like one of my workers. Now he hasn't tipped his hand as to why yet. Notice what she says here. Why have I found such favor in your sight that you should take notice of me since I am a foreigner? She gets pretty clearly who she is in the status of this society. She doesn't view herself as an equal in this society. She doesn't view herself as an equal amongst these people. Because, folks, when you're constantly being referred to as Ruth the Moabitess, you know, the girl from Moab that returned with Naomi, the Moabitess chick, you get it pretty clear in your head that you're kind of not necessarily welcome. It's like if you refer to people like, you know, Bill the Yankee. This is my friend Dave, the Redskins fan. We'll pray for his soul. It's Dave, you know, from Washington, up north, the Redskins fan, that guy. It's humorous for us, but there's a section of folks that, man, once they get in tight, that's it. Have you ever been in a section like that? With folks like that? That you will, no matter what you do, you are always the constant outsider. Except for in this culture, being the constant outsider could get you beat up. Could get you more than harmed. Notice Boaz gives her some very cryptic statements, and Naomi does as well. Check this out. And Boaz in answer says, all that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me. I bet it has. And then some. The town of Bethlehem was all abuzz. That's the phraseology of chapter 1. And some of that phraseology has the indication of wagging tongues. And others have this woman that's come back with Naomi because of the great hardship that she has had and has been with her even as she said, oh, the Lord's been bad and mean and hard on me. All that you have done has been reported to me. It's a small town. So, we've all lived in small towns. If not, you've all lived in small communities. It doesn't take long for your business to get around to everybody. And then some. Get back to you pretty quick. I used to play this game in Iraq. I would start rumors intentionally just to see how fast it took to get to the colonel's office. And she would play along with me. So, she goes, what's the rumor for the week? I said, the rumor for this week is we're being cut to 10-month deployment. She goes, really? I says, yeah. I says, that's like a great one. 24 hours. I hear we're being cut back to 10 months. So, it doesn't take long. Now, notice what happens here. All that you have done for your mother-in-law has been reported to me at the death of your husband. And how you left your mother and father and the land of your birth and the people that you previously did not know. So what he focuses on is not that she's the Moabitess, not that she's the outsider, not that she's the one that's the foreigner, Not that she's got this big scarlet M, but the fact that she is so self-serving that she gave up the land of her birth, her mom and her dad, and all that she could have obtained in her own land to come and listen to all of that and continue to take care of a woman who is in the midst of going, oh, woe is me, my life is over. God has been mean to me and it has been so unfair. I know all that you've done. And instead of being someone who has said, well, you know what? These people are pretty mean and unaccepting of me. I don't have to be accepting of them. None of that is reported because none of that happens. She still abides by the oath that she takes for Naomi and it goes out into the field. She doesn't have to do that. There are other ways in Palestine of making a living that doesn't require hard work. Especially if you're a foreigner. And yet she goes into the field to do very hard, laborious, it's almost something that is done below people's status in life. To provide for a woman whose people treat her like a foreigner and like dirt. And this is something Boaz sees and recognizes, and doesn't mention the fact that she is the Moabitess. May the Lord reward your work, your wages be full from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you've come to seek refuge. A little bit of prophetic there, because eventually it's Boaz that's actually going to come and provide refuge for her and Naomi. And that the reward that she has is a son that's going to come from Boaz and a grandson and children. And eventually we see the line of David come to this. Very prophetic statement here. All this is occurring in the midst of Naomi sitting at the home going, life is so bad, life is so hard, I can't understand how life is going to get better. Right here, Ruth is seeing this unfold before her and can't wait to get home. Because right now, if the story just stops right here, this is infinitely better than what they have had before they got there. Right now, if it just stops right there. The Boaz and Ruth, the atomic bomb drops, they all die. The story is infinitely better. Because a man is taking interest in her protection and going to provide and has already provided more for her than anybody else in that area has to this point. But yet it gets better. Then she said, I found favor in your sight, my Lord. For you have spoken, and for you have comforted me, and indeed spoke kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your servants. Recognizes who she is. Recognizes the greatness of the gift that this individual has bestowed upon her, and recognizes her status. But notice Boaz keeps treating her, what's the phraseology he uses? My daughter. A sign of familiar or family relation. Not in a weird, twisted way. So she gleaned in the field until evening. Jumped past some stuff, didn't I? I jumped off of a whole section of verse. People are like, yeah, we'll get out even faster. Yeah, not so fast. I caught that. And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, come, here and eat. I read like Christopher Walken at times too. Come here and eat that you may, and eat and dip bread in the vinegar. So she sat beside the reapers, and he served her roasted grain. She ate until she was satisfied and had some left over. And Boaz rose, as she rose to glean, and Boaz commanded his servants, saying, let her glean, even among the sheaves. Let her glean among the sheaves. Let her go to the stacks that you've just made. Now, this is absolutely unheard of. If you were to do this as a gleaner, you could get beat down in a hurry. And Boaz looks at it and says, look, not only is she allowed to cut from the corners and anything you drop, but she can go to the sheaves and pull out whatever she wants. Now imagine the servant. But brother, she's a Moabitess. Yeah, I got that. Now you don't understand. She's a foreigner. I got that. She's a Redskins fan. Got that too. No, you don't understand. No, you don't understand. You don't understand. She has been far greater and far kinder to one of our own than we have been. Did you catch that? This foreign lady has been far kinder to one of their own than they have. Because they've been talking about her. In the midst of her distress, is there any verse mention that they've gone to comfort her? The silence in this text about how the people of Bethlehem have treated Naomi is pretty loud. And notice yet, what Boaz says is, no, she can go to the sheaves and she can pull out grain that she wants. And notice he's not done yet. And do not insult her. So not only are you not allowed to physically touch her, but I don't want you sitting there and insulting her, calling her a foreigner, calling her names, or trying to verbally run her off. Capiche? And you shall purposely pull out for her some. So not only is she going to cut down some grain in the corner along the field, you're going to also help her get grain by pulling it out and laying it down. Now that has got a jack to hide in his hand. But guess what? He's going to do it. Because of the faithfulness that she has had to a woman who is in great distress, who has seen the loss of her husband and 2 sons, and has given up all that she has to go and be with this woman, who right now is an emotional wreck, and yet goes out to the field in spite of a community's disdain for her to provide for this woman. So this individual, Boaz, Boaz doesn't have to do this. Here's the great thing about God. God's grace is something He does not have to give to us. We take it for granted. Is God's unmerited favor. Unmerited. If it was merited, that means that we deserve it. We've done something to deserve it. Unmerited means there's nothing that we've done to deserve God's gracious actions towards us. He does it because He wants to. Has nothing to do about us. Boaz is showing God's graciousness to this woman. But she's done some things to earn it. Folks, you and I haven't. We can work as hard as we want. We can take care of the poor, the elderly, all the livelong day. But I can tell you what, none of those good works means a hill of beans before our Lord and God and Savior. Did my mic die?
Yeah. Dead.
Now I'm back in stereo, aren't I? See, I told you I should have come with subtitles. Do not insult her. Also, you shall purposely pull out some grain and leave it. And do not rebuke her. Don't tell her she can't have it. Don't try to run her off. Notice this statement is there a couple of times. You think Boaz knows his men? Okay, I won't touch her. It's like the kids in the back seat, right? I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Right? My goodness, my poor parents have cursed me twice. I hope you have a child just like you. Unfortunately, my wife does. 2 of us. One's a little bit older, the other one's just a little bit cuter. You heard that? And so she gleaned in the field until evening, and when she beat out what she had an ephod of barley. That's a lot. You can sustain a family on that for a long time. Boaz could have just let her have what was the minimum requirement. The corners and the sides and the edges and anything that hit the ground that was no less than 3. That would be the minimum requirement. That would be what a good godly Jew, if he was wanting to be a good godly Jew, would be required by law to be a good godly Jew. And she would not have gotten anywhere near that amount. Boaz exceeds the standard and goes beyond what is requirement of a good godly Jew. And sets the example of what a godly man would do. It's not just simply enough to follow the rules to the letter. And she took up and went to the city and saw her mother-in-law, into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also took out and gave Naomi what she had left after she was satisfied. So she brought her mom some food, her mother-in-law some food. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? And with whom did you work?" Because this is astonishing for her, because this amount is so large that may he who took notice of you be blessed. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked. Now, Ruth does not know who Boaz is. Boaz does not walk up to Ruth and go, "Hi, I'm Boaz, the single relative of your mother-in-law, Naomi. Hi. I'm rich." See that horse and buggy over there? It's paid for. It's a 450 BC model. I don't like the 460 model. Didn't do that. Doesn't enter. She has no clue who this guy is. Which makes it all the more special. Which makes it all the more gracious. She doesn't know who this guy is. She just thinks that this guy is showing her a great amount of compassion and mercy only because he's told her, "I've heard what you've done for your mother-in-law." That's it. There's no ulterior motive here with this guy. The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness." The word chesed again. This is the thing that God shows his covenantal relationship and kindness to his people. Surprisingly, Naomi now recognizes what this word means. God hasn't withdrawn his kindness from me. I got it all wrong. Folks, have we ever noticed that after we come through the darkest part of the storm and things start to look up, we look back at the storm and go, "Oh, it's not too bad." Red face, white face, blue face. Red face, white face, blue face. First day of red face is watching cats being shoved into a bag. It is the most hilarious moment that I had for the last 12 months as a basic trainee chaplain, because the round browns are out, the drill sergeants are out, and they are yelling at all these brand new soldiers. Actually, they're not even soldiers yet. These brand new trainees or warriors. And they get off the bus wild-eyed, and they start hearing yelling, and they just run, and they follow the guy in front of them. The guy in front of them goes off a cliff. They're all off a cliff. And then they get in a formation or a gaggle, because right now they don't know how to stand or stand together, so you got them standing like this and hands in them. And then the yelling commences, and the push-ups start, and I'm looking and go, customer, 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 customer. Whole group of customers. Go over to golf company. And so you sit and you watch this. And in red phase, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end. What have I done? What have I gotten myself? What world is that? I don't think I can handle this. This is so hard. And you're like, it's 10 weeks. It's 10 weeks. The oddest conversation I had was a guy that had been away from his wife for 4 weeks. He says, "You don't know what it's like to be away from your wife and kids for 4 weeks." I said, "Yeah, I wouldn't have a clue, brother." 27 months in Iraq, brother. When you do 27 months, you can do 10 weeks on your head, okay? "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know." Yeah. It's the worst thing ever. Week 9.5, chapel service. First 3 weeks, chapel's packed. 350 kids. I got them up on the stage. Next 3 weeks, still good attendance. Not so many on the stage. Last Sunday before they head off to AIT, they no longer need Jesus. Why? Because the storm was horrible. This guy is yelling at me. They've torn up my room like twice. And now I'm done. And you see them all like going, it wasn't as bad. I'm like, oh, quit lying to me. You were crying like a little schoolgirl 4 weeks ago. Have you ever noticed that we're on this side of the storm looking back at it? Most of them, barring some life-altering, horrific change, wasn't as bad as we thought it was. And even those are not as life and catastrophic as we thought they were when we were on the other side. Why? Because we're through it. And we look back and go, well, it's bad. Folks, there's a lot of experiences I would love to never experience again. There are a lot of things I'd love to be able to wake up one morning and never know. Can't change that. Many of you would feel the same way. There are a lot of experiences that if God was so generous that He could wipe them from your existence, you would not know that you not know them. Your life would be happier, you think. But in reality, that storm helps you recognize the graciousness of God. Naomi, when she sees that there's a possibility for redemption here, notice she responds to, the Lord has not forgotten His kindness to the living and the dead. Because she recognizes what Boaz has the capability of doing, to be able to provide a male heir so that the family name can continue on. Naomi has provision, Ruth has a husband, and the line continues. Notice that just barely a chapter over, she's like schizophrenic. She went from the world is coming to an end to, what, I got hope? All in just a little bit of grain. This man is one of our closest relatives. Then Ruth, even the writer gets in on this. No Moabitess. We know who she is, brother. You don't have to put her name in there. Said, because I don't think she walks around and goes, hi, my name is Ruth. Like James Bond. Bond. James Bond. She doesn't walk around going, Moabitess. Ruth. Moabitess. It's not her name. Yet it's in the book all over the place. Then Ruth the Moabitess says, though we've forgotten who she is. Said, furthermore, he said that you should stay close to my servants until they have finished all the harvest. So not just this field, not just this one day, not just this one opportunity where Boaz shows a little bit of kindness that day and says, okay, that's good enough. I've done all that is required for me to be a good Jew and a good godly man. Ka-chunk, I got my godly man stamp. As I moved from field to field, Boaz was a wealthy man, had multiple fields. And notice what it says, until we finish the harvest. And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter, it is good, my daughter, that you go with his, do not go out, my dyslexia's kicking in. It is good, my daughters, that you go out with his maids, unless others fall upon you in another field. This was a danger amongst female gleaners in this world. You figure it wouldn't be, especially a foreigner, because she has a lower status than everybody else. And in some folks, when you are of a lower status, you are less than and can be taken advantage of. So not only does Boaz look after Naomi's physical needs, Naomi's health needs, looks after Ruth's physical needs and Ruth's physical security. He instructs his men not to harass her, not to degrade her, not to run her down, but to stay with her maidens so that she doesn't fall victim in someone else's field alone. So she stayed close by his maidens, and Boaz ordered, close to the maidens of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. And she lived with her mother-in-law. Notice that. So it's not just for one day. It's not just for one field. It's not just for one harvesting season, but for the two harvesting seasons within Israel, for the barley and then the wheat. The two seasons in which most folks are going to get their flour and grains that are going to sustain them for the year. She got a year's worth of grain in the first encounter with Boaz. One chapter over. Go back one chapter. It is as gloomy and as dark as you can get. It's like Shakespeare is writing the first half. Everybody's dying. And Naomi's response, remember? God's hand has been against me. Why? Because she couldn't see the provision. So deep she was in the storm that she could not see how any of the circumstances around her life could ever lead to anything positive. God's hand is against me. I went out full, a husband, 2 sons. I came back empty. That ought to make Ruth feel great, by the way. One chapter over. God hasn't forgotten His covenantal faithfulness, not just to the living, me and you, but also to the dead. What changed? What changed? Her husband's still dead. Her sons are still dead. What changed? The fact that an individual began to show mercy and kindness to them. The situation, they're still in the same boat. They just have a little bit more grain to party with. She could not see how God would maintain His faithfulness in the darkest of situations. Folks, that's what happens when we read our text. We read this book, and we are familiar with the stories trapped in this book. And we believe them. It's just sometimes we don't believe that it will happen for us. We go, it's great, that's great. It's a great story that this happened for Ruth, but you don't know what a hurt I've got. You're right, I don't. But I know the God who's walking with you in that hurt. And I know the God that providentially provides in that hurt and has a purpose for that hurt, even though you and I may never fully know. Job is never told. Read the book. He is never told why he suffers. We know. But the author never writes a note to Job. P.S. Job, you hurt because the devil came before the Lord and said this. It's not in there. We go through life and we never know why the things are. And in not knowing, we look and we go, God's unfair to us. And very quickly after this, you see Naomi and Ruth are being provided for. And let the cat out of the bag. There's a marriage coming and some kids. Well, great. Now you won't show up for the rest of 2 chapters. It's a short book. And we look at it and we go, that's great. For them. But you don't know about us and the insurmountable thing that's in front of me. And it terrifies me. And I'm scared to death. And there's no easy way out. Folks, all storms are that way. Those tornadoes get their own warning because they can suck your house right off its foundation. Right? You never hear of a sprinkle warning. This just in, there's a sprinkle in Killeen. But if you put out there's a tornado in Killeen, folks are like, ice, right? There'll be ice maybe tomorrow. Go to the Walmart or H-E-B. There's like a can of corn just spinning around on a shelf by itself. For a day worth of ice. We look at it and we go, these are great stories. They're great. And we take comfort in them. But I don't believe God can be with me in this hurt. That's the same faith that Naomi's got. And she sees the provision in the hand of God. These stories aren't just simply for us to go, oh, that's cute. They're for us to internalize and realize that the same God that provided in the darkest moment of Naomi's life is the same God that will provide for you in the darkest moment of your life. And you have no clue as to whoever as you meet along the way, their ability to be able to reach out and help you out. And you may or may not see it bring fully to fruition in your lifetime, but that's okay. You serve a gracious God who still walks with you in the midst of that hurt. Read some of the early church fathers' martyrdoms. They went to the fire. And unlike Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, didn't get saved out of it. But their God was still there with them. And they still worshiped their God as they died. Because His providential grace is sufficient enough for us in the greatest of struggles. We simply have to adjust our eyes off the struggle and on to the God who provides. Naomi has it until provision comes. Where do we keep our focus in life? The storm is always scary. The storm is always big. The storm is always overwhelming. But God is always greater. And God is always there. And God always provides. Maybe not the way we'd like for Him to provide. Maybe not in the way we wished Him to provide. But His provision is better than the provision that we could think of. Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank You for this day and for this opportunity to come before You. We thank You for stories like the book of Ruth that help us as we go through the storm of life and the struggle of life and the hurt of life. We see that in the story, though Ruth is provided for, Ruth must still go about the work of obtaining that provision by gleaning. And though while You provide, there's still work for us to do in that provision. We ask for Your blessings upon us and for Your grace and mercy upon us as we go about those life storms, as we come alongside those who struggle in life storms, as we are preparing to go into life storms. We ask that You help us keep our eye fixed upon the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before Him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sits down at the right hand of the Father. We ask for these things in Your name we pray. Amen.
Hymn number 300. Without Him I could do nothing. Without Him I'd surely fail. Without Him I would be drifting like a ship without a sail. Jesus, oh Jesus, do you know Him today? Do not turn Him away. Oh Jesus, oh Jesus, without Him, how lost I would be.
It's great to have you all here this evening, folks. Why don't we go ahead and join together around the sections for our evening prayer.